The Hidden Truth, Chapter 1. One winter day, I jumped out of bed to go back to school. I liked school, but I didn't enjoy my nose turning red in that freezing cold. After having breakfast that my mom had prepared, I dressed in layers and left the house. My mom had gone to work, but I was always happy that she made breakfast for me before leaving. My dad had passed away 2 years ago. Since then, my mom and I had been living in a small basement apartment. School was a bit far, but I didn't want to put my mom in a tough spot with the bus fare. The cold wind stung my face, and my eyes watered, but I finally arrived at school. I love school because it's my only way out. Even though some of my friends think I exaggerate, I don't pay much attention to them. My best friend, Aaron, is just like me, always caring about his studies. After class, I decided to go to the library. There was a book I liked, and I was going to take it. The librarian, Mrs. Carter, told me that the book was already checked out. Mrs. Carter was a very kind person who had a special love for children. According to rumors, her son had been missing for 10 years, and after a while, she had given up hope of ever finding him and let the matter go. What she had gone through was not easy at all. When she told me the book wasn't available, I started browsing through the shelves to look for another one. I always had trouble picking books, so I spent hours in the library each time. In the back, there was an old shelf, and as I wandered through it, I found a book that caught my attention. It looked old, its edges were crumpled, and the pages had begun to yellow. I picked it up and began to inspect it, and as I flipped through the pages, a small piece of paper fell out. I picked it up but didn't look at it closely since the writing was unclear. Still, my curiosity got the better of me, and I put it in my pocket. When Mrs. Carter saw that I had taken the book, she said, "Ethan, you don't usually read books like this," in surprise. I smiled and replied, "It caught my interest, Mrs. Carter." I read so many books that Mrs. Carter knew what kind of books I liked. I took the book and made my way home. As I walked, I thought to myself that my mom would have already started the stove and made a hot soup for dinner. When I arrived home, my mom was there, and she asked how my day had gone. I tiredly said, "It went well, Mom. I even got a book after school, and I can't wait to read it." After we ate dinner on our little wooden table next to the stove, I went to my room. As I picked up the book, I remembered the note I found. I took it out of my coat pocket and started to examine it. Since it was in an old book, I thought it was just a forgotten note from an old library worker. The writing was hard to read. I thought it wasn't important and put it back in my pocket. I started reading the book, but I must have fallen asleep because I woke up in the morning. I had breakfast that my mom had prepared again and braved the cold for school. The school route had become unbearable for me by now. I arrived at school and went to class. When Aaron arrived, we tried to warm up by the radiator at the end of the corridor and chatted until class started. When I put my hand in my pocket, I realized the note was still there. I showed it to Aaron. After looking at it carefully, Aaron said, "Ethan, this might be trying to tell us something." I laughed and said it was probably just an old note, but Aaron insisted that there were some bold letters written on it, suggesting there might be a hidden message. I thought it was silly at first, but the more I thought about it, the more curious I became. When the bell rang, we went to class, but I kept thinking about the note. Could it really mean something? After school, Aaron decided to come over to my place. It might have seemed silly, but we decided to take another look at the note. After dinner, we warmed our frozen hands by the stove and went to my room. We stared at the paper for a while but didn't really understand it. Aaron then pointed out that some letters were written in bold. When we put them together, it formed the word tree. Aaron got excited and said, It's talking about a tree in the back of the school. But why? Maybe it was a tree that needed to be cut down years ago, or maybe something more was going on. After thinking about it for a few weeks, we finally decided to investigate the tree. But we couldn't do it during the day, as people would question what we were doing, and we'd probably end up being laughed at for no reason. During school days, we pretended to casually walk around the tree, looking for clues. Finally, Friday came. That evening, after school, we agreed to meet around 7 o'clock and go to school. Since there wouldn't be school the next day, the janitors would be gone. After dinner, I asked my mom if I could go to Erin's house. At first, she wasn't sure, but eventually, she agreed. I hated lying to my mom, but I had no choice. If I told her the truth, she wouldn't let me go, fearing something might happen to me. At around 7, I left the house and went to meet Erin. It wasn't long before he arrived, and we walked to the front of the school. The cold was biting, and we made our way toward the tree with a flashlight in hand. As we circled the tree, we suddenly heard a noise from the school and quickly turned off the flashlight. But no one should have been there. The janitors should have already left. We realized the principal might be in school, so we hid behind the tree. Soon enough, the school door opened, and out came Mr. Walter, the janitor. We were surprised because he was not supposed to be there at this hour. He often stayed in the school after work hours to sleep. What was he doing here with a large bag in his hand? As we watched, he dropped the bag, and books scattered all over the ground. We looked at the books in confusion. What were they? And why was Mr. Walter carrying them at night?